What's new, 802? I'm Becca Hammond, and you're listening to Vermont Talks. Vermont Talks may include graphic or explicit content. Listener discretion is advised. On this week's episode of Vermont Talks, we're talking with Justin Crowther. He's the owner of the Burlington Record Plant. The Burlington Record Plant is a small boutique pressing records on Pine Street. The business was formed in 2014 and had the honor of printing the very first vinyl record in the state of Vermont back in 2015. Welcome, Justin. Let's get going. Tell me about yourself, Justin.
Yes. Hi, Becca. Thank you for having me and asking us to be a part of this. We haven't had the chance to do this given the pandemic. So I'm glad we found a way to do this, and thanks for asking us. As you said, my name is Justin. I'm the owner operator of the Burlington Record Plant, and we manufacture 12-inch records in Burlington, Vermont.
And I want to point out right away, you have the honor of saying that you made the first vinyl record in the state of Vermont.
Yes, we did. And I am very grateful and psyched and always overjoyed about that fact.
So what year was that?
That was in 2000, I guess, 15. It would have been in 2015.
Do you remember who the band was and what album it was?
Yep. The electroplating process, the person who makes our stampers that I showed you, I asked for a practice set, and he just sent just random pieces. And one side was a reggae artist by the name of Gregory Isaacs, and the other side was like an old surf band called Echo and the Bunnymen.
Oh my goodness.
And it was like an amazing...
I was to say, this sounds like the perfect combo.
Totally was.
And first record in Vermont.
I'll say, yeah.
So I'm going to back up just a second. I am in the coolest space I have been in Burlington. And I think this one actually holds the tie, actually. I can't say the coolest because Big Heavy World has one of the coolest, loungy feels to it. This, however, is covered in the most beautiful records I have ever seen in my life. And there are hundreds of them. It's a little bit overwhelming.
Thank you.
You want to describe this place? Because it's a podcast, so people can't see it. I'm going to post some pictures on our show notes, but do you want to just kind of tell me what it's like when you walk in here?
Yeah. So it's 1,250 square feet. It was a blank warehouse when we found it through our friend Christy Mitchell at Satellite Arts. And she was developing this space for artists, and we, it seemed to be big enough for what we needed. So it was an old auto shop for a long time. So that kind of sets the stage a bit. But it's, your standard old garage door, and it's an L shape, and we have a steam boiler and two machines and a handful of other machines, all kind of in a really tight-knit spot, and we like to call it cozy, and it works for us.
The ceilings in here are so high that even though the walls are a little close, I almost don't really notice because it's so overwhelmingly big.
Yep.
And beautiful. I love what you did with the place.
Thank you.
It feels so nice in here. I'm trying to describe that 241 feel where it's too cool. It's just a little too cool. It's a little overwhelming, and it's a secret. I don't know. Have you been on 7 Days? Have you talked to those guys?
We did do a 7 Days article in the very beginning, and yeah, I've done a ton of interviews, but I guess not in a long time. I did do just a pretty fancy interview last week.
Congrats.
Thank you. Bloomberg Business.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But I have no idea what's going to come out of that. And the guy was really great, and we'll see.
Awesome. Well, I feel like I'm going to mention on the show too. I've mentioned this earlier to Justin, but vinyl outsold CDs in the first half of 2020 for the first time since I think the early 90s was what they said. I'm a little overwhelmed by that. I love vinyl records. It's very cool. And you just happen to be in the perfect position. You've got the business. It's solid. It's been around for 5 years plus.
Yeah.
And now the market suddenly exploded for you.
Yeah. So that's a good thing and a bad thing because, well, it's all mostly a good thing. I can't say there's anything bad to it other than, we are just such a small manufacturer. Like I had the courage to go into this just because of my experience in like the underground music scene growing up, and with 7-inch and vinyl, 12-inch records were always just like a staple in the hardcore and punk community. So I knew that if we could figure it out and if we could just service that part of the market, like we would be okay. So, we do we have done major label stuff. But, largely we do a lot of like 500 to 1,000 copy runs, up to a 2,000 copy run. So the resurgence is great. But we're kind of, I don't really know how to say it other than, the resurgence is probably great for the super big plants right now,
But you'll ride that wave into becoming a super big player. Yeah. I could see it happening.
Well, thank you.
I have a feeling that, because I know a lot of bands in town, we have an overwhelming amount of bands in Vermont compared to a lot of cities this size. I didn't realize it, but we really do have hundreds and hundreds of bands, and they get vinyl records pressed, and they do these small runs that you're talking about. And it's funny how they have to reach out to companies so far away. The idea that they could come somewhere local it's so exciting, because then they could see the record, they could be part of the process, and
definitely
they can see everything you can do.
Right.
These colorful albums are so cool.
I love your enthusiasm, yeah, it's an amazing thing when people that live locally, like 5% or less of what we do is local. But the people that we do come and that are able to come in when we're pressing the record is like, that's what makes it all worth it. Totally.
I'm sure that first moment where you get to hear it too, and it's your own music and it's your first vinyl pressing.
Yep. Whenever we have if someone we know is like coming in to watch the record or take some photos or something, I try to put the record on the turntable and just crank it up. So not only are we pressing it, when they come in, they can hear the record. I just think that's special.
It is. Yeah. Oh, it really is. It feels special walking in here. I feel like you and Big Heavy World have this.
Jim is my dear brother. So,
I was going to say, you have this vibe about both
funny.
of these places, and it's so happy and cohesive, and it's so great that he's storing music, and you are also storing music.
Right. Good point.
These look a little cooler than the CDs,
though. Yeah, well.
So I'm going to describe some of these albums. He's got transparent albums with color bursts. There's pinks, there's purples, there's oranges, there's blues, there's basically anything you can imagine you could do with an album, and a lot more. It looks like Justin's done it. He's got some daisy colored albums that are just abstract and beautiful. Some of these are just such cool tie-dye effects too. Justin, how do you get the colors in the album? And can you walk us through, give us the Reader's Digest version of how you make these things?
Sure. So to make a record involves a lot of natural resources and time, and there are so many different parts of the process that can go wrong or be inconsistent, is what makes it such a product to manufacture, or such a difficult product to manufacture. So it begins with a soft lacquer paint on an aluminum disc. A cutting lathe uses a sapphire cutting tip to cut the programming into the blank lacquer. And so it's essentially a microscopic speaker that is etching the material physically into the lacquer. That gets overnighted to the electroplating facility, and it's very time sensitive because it starts to degrade as soon as the cut is complete. It gets to the electroplating facility. A dear friend, his name is Desmond. He's in New Jersey, and he's been making stampers since 1981. He gets those and makes them for, just about everybody.
I was going to say, that's probably extremely difficult.
Right.
And
absolutely.
This guy is everyone's probably like, oh, I know him. If they knew this man in the industry, is...
You're exactly, it's right on the money. And he makes the negatives off of the lacquer. It's an electroplating process. And then we get sent the negative, which is the stamper, which is like a hardened metal, so we can press it in the machine. We heat up the molds with high pressure steam to about 300 degrees. The extruder extrudes about 170 gram puck. Looks like a hockey puck. We hand load the labels, which also require baking, curing. We hand load the labels, we hand load the preform material in the machine, and the machine goes up and squeezes it at about 140 tons, which is approximately 1,800 psi on a 12-inch ram. So it's an incredible amount of force to push the PVC from the inside out and form into those microscopic grooves. And then high pressure water kicks on and cools the molds down to the desired temperature.
So how hot were they? So that much pressure, and how hot is
300 degrees.
Wow.
And
you don't want to get your fingers stuck in that.
Yeah, no, big bad news. And fortunately, I've had the help from an amazing engineer to build some serious safety features into our equipment.
Very smart.
We take it. I say there's three of us that work here, and I always say to the two people who work with me, the most important thing is safety. If we're okay mentally, physically, we can make other people happy. And, that's it. Number one. So this is super dangerous process. And I take that very seriously,
Yes. It's very obvious that you take this whole process extremely seriously.
So, and then, the record cools down to about 110, 115, 120 degrees, comes out of the machine. We hand pick it out of the machine. We put it on the trimmer. The trimmer squeezes it together and gives it a nice cut on the edge with a heated blade. We stack them 100 copies up on the A side up, and then we flip them and let them cure for 24 hours B side up. And then we begin the assembly process.
So how many, if you had all of the materials ready, if you'd already baked your labels and everything was set, how many records can you guys make in a day, on a normal day?
400.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's about like a record a minute, roughly. But when it's all said and done, when everything kind of goes full circle of the process, you have a new record in your hand about once a minute.
Wow.
So,
but that does take some prep time and a lot of planning.
Yep. And when the steam, if the boiler starts to lose steam pressure, and then it makes up, which is how a boiler operates. You have some records that will be a little thicker when the steam's down, when the heat's down, and you'll have records that will be a little over-cured when the water is rising. And so we were constantly keeping our finger and adjusting by the seconds, like 1 to 3 seconds of adjustments throughout the entire day to make sure that it's spot on. Because we're molding this tiny flat piece of PVC inside these big steel molds, so it's a very delicate process, as archaic as it looks.
Right. Yeah. And the little teeny tiny sound waves, like each little noise that they make is so infinitesimally small on that record. You can ruin a whole word really easily at any point in the process. Like I don't know what you could do if you lose a hair on it and then press it. I would assume that would be bad. You
want to hear a quick story about a hair I found recently?
Yeah, tell me a story.
So it's a joke, of course. Like we found a pink hair in one of the records that we were making, and one of the operators, Alex, his girlfriend, is known for having dyed pink hair. So the joke is I put it under the microscope and you could see this pink hair, and it doesn't damage the master, but it was just really funny to see. Side note.
Yeah, I'm sure anything you get on it.
But yeah, that's the thing. Dust, any little pieces of metal, flake, like goodbye.
Yeah, oh yeah, your girlfriend's hair.
Girlfriend's hair, yep.
That's hilarious.
But
when you have pink hair and people find your hair somewhere, it's your hair.
That's it.
If it's brown, it could be anybody's.
Right.
Oh, wow. So the colors, at what stage? How do you plan the color? Is there a lot of consistency when you have these beautiful abstract colors? Are all of the albums somewhat consistent, or are they all different?
Yep. So any of the clear colors, standard stock colors, in clear or opaque, we have on our website kind of just like a big color chart to choose from. And a lot of those stock colors will come up just pretty consistent. And a lot of the stuff on the wall is stuff that I've either like custom made or like lightened or brightened, or it's all stuff that like was unique. Every time we pull one off that we've never done before is kind of what is hanging. But no, everyone is a little different for sure. Just the nature of the process. We use a clear compound and add a 1 to 2% color concentrate.
Wow. It's incredible how beautiful these things look, because when I think of an album, at least traditionally in the last 25 years, I always just thought of the Black Album,
Right.
like a standard black record. And the coolest part about an album always used to be the artwork that came with it. But you're kind of going for a totally different route. Like, these things are beautiful. These things are fun to watch spin. These are cool.
Yeah, that's the other thing, that I always forget, that when you put these on the table with these colors, like, it's a whole other kind of experience too, which is cool. But I've had the honor to work under and learn under an artist in Burlington that helps me with like color mixing and just kind of color theory.
Which is very important, because you could make a brown record pretty easily.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like I want to go beyond just making stock color stuff. I want the album to like really speak to the package as much as possible in a really thoughtful way.
Yeah, oh yeah. I think that's one of the big things with a record. You hold the record, you hold the artwork, you have the experience of listening to it, and it's a very deliberate and profound moment when you place that record and you drop that needle, and you have to be so careful. It's not like I said earlier, it's not like you throw shuffle on your phone and toss it.
Right.
And I don't know I love music, don't get me wrong. All music should be enjoyed at all times, but something about putting a real album on, and because you're devoting that time to that album, it's one artist or it's a collection, someone thought about it. And it's just such a beautiful thing. I think everyone's starting to miss the tactile things in the world. It's too much. Everything can't exist on my cell phone. I want to hold it. I want to feel it. And I want to feel like I've got a piece of that band in my hand.
Yeah, I believe that. I 110%.
So who are the coolest people you've worked with? Everyone's cool, but who stood out to you as being the most fun, most ridiculous people?
Yeah. Well, I could name one person I've done some projects with that I think is extremely thoughtful and just always a joy to work with, and just really takes everything over the top, is a guy named Dan Blakesley. And we've done a handful of stuff with him. He screen prints the jackets. He draws all the artwork. He draws out all the liner notes. He books his own shows. He works around the clock. And, we're all starving working musicians, but I think this guy's the real deal.
Wow. Yeah, that's, I was going to say, he gets it.
Right.
He gets that need for that tactile thing. And more than a t-shirt, I want the music in my hand.
Right.
I feel like you get that with albums too. Something about that is... And it's weird because I was thinking this 10 years ago, going through my parents' old albums from the 70s. I had nothing like that. And that's all I could think of is in my youth, my entire generation, all the millennials, 2000 to 2020. I have nothing like that. I don't have an album to look back at. Like, they have Aerosmith and Jimi Hendrix and all of these old iconic albums, and they can pull them out and be like the Doors. This is like the original pressing
with their name on the cover or whatever. Yeah,
it's so weird to hold those things and be like, yeah, this is the music of the 70s. And my whole we don't have that. It's kind of like a dream. Like, what was that album? I don't remember. I don't know anymore.
Is it on Spotify? Look it up.
Right. Yeah. It's gone. I forgot the name of the band. I don't even know how to Google it anymore. And that's the only way to find it is Google. Like, wow, it's kind of a hole in our generation. It's funny to think that, wow, Woodstock, there's a physical record. There's definitely a physical record, but 2009? Maybe not. Right. 2010? Maybe not. Maybe it just went poof and now it's gone and everyone forgot about it.
Right.
Oh, so tell me about you, Justin. Where'd you start?
Yeah. I started making records. From where? What's starting line?
So, where are you from? Let's start with that.
I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm from central Pennsylvania, and I moved here in 2001.
What drew you to the area?
I played in bands, and my brother was here, and I wanted to look into school, and I came to be with my brother and lived in the basement, and that was it.
And you never left.
Never left.
That's awesome. Wow. You've become a Vermonter. Once you're here for 10 years, you're a Vermonter.
Yeah,
right?
I'm so proud to be.
So you played music. What did you play for an instrument?
I played guitar in a band in Pennsylvania, and we toured a bunch all over the place. And then I left there, and I played drums in a band here.
Nice, cool. What kind of music? What scene were you in?
It was called Speed Western, and it was like a heavy metal, like a country.
I was
music.
not sure what you were gonna say. I was like speed western.
Yep.
Like metal. Okay. Country.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I play in a punk band, play drums now in a punk band, and played guitar in some bands. Like, whatever I kind of find my way to. And
I feel like the punk scene and metal and a lot of the heavier, faster music, the underground is so much stronger in those genres that it tends to lead to things that are wonderful, like having records made. You mentioned that you were really into the underground scene, and that kind of led to this. So how did you slowly go from being in a band to doing this? This is incredible.
Yep. We were on tour in Rhode Island, or not Rhode Island, no, New Hampshire. We were playing a gig, and we went to a friend's house after the show, and I was just looking at his record collection. I don't drink or do drugs, and I was looking at it soberly going, how are these made? I had no idea how they were made, and I thought that if I could figure it out, that I would have a job doing it. And I just didn't stop until I got to a point where I feel like we could open the doors. And
that's insane. So what year, do you remember what year
that was?
2014.
13 or 14.
Really? So it was that quickly that you were like, I wonder how these are made into, I'm going to make these.
Yeah,
I'm serious about this.
7 months, 8 months later. Yeah, we're doing.
That's so impressive. Like, you really threw yourself into this.
Yeah. I also feel like it's something that, I feel like, and like the universe will just like pass you the ball, and like, you can like hold on to it or like pass it along or whatever. And like, I feel like it's bigger than me, and it's like something that I was like, kind of supposed to be doing right now kind of thing. Because when I look back on it, it was like, a lot of like constantly going and going and going, but like I couldn't have planned to do this. I never thought that I would be doing it. And it's like, so I got to believe there's some of that in there.
Right. You caught the bug and it was your calling, and you just went for it.
I guess. Yeah.
This is so impressive to me, because it's just so impressive to see a business built from the ground up to start, but something like this that is so complicated,
right,
and technically complicated. This isn't, I don't know, because you can make like a t-shirt printing business. Yeah. That's a thing. People do that. But with something like this, you brought back a dying art form that a lot of people just kind of wrote off and said it would never, ever exist again, and that's archaic and silly. But you restored a machine. Can you tell my audience about the story of the machine? Yeah. It's so cool.
Yep. So the machine I found in Germany, and it was from 1962, and it was in a Warner Brothers manufacturing plant, from what I understand, in Europe. And we had it shipped here. Took everything that I had, every bit of resources I had, and bought this first machine and had it shipped on to New York City, and then trucked here. And
did they have to ship that on a boat?
Yeah.
Wow. So you had to wait 6 weeks.
Yeah, or even more. And then it was like in the port, the ships will line up, and sometimes you have to wait a week until they like taxi in.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, we got that trucked here and unloaded it and just started dismantling it and seeing what part did what. And I had the thought, like, who else is manufacturing here, like doing something similar? Burton Snowboards, is like right over in the neighborhood. And I went to the prototype facility, and they like, vetted me or whatever. And I got like security clearance to go in, and
very serious.
Yeah. Because they're making like world-class stuff there,
Right. Well, that's it. They don't want to give away their secrets.
Not some young kid that's starting a manufacturing business next door. So I made friends with an engineer and mechanic at the prototype facility. His name is Devor Amrain, and he is amazing. And I was like, can you stop by and check out the stuff that I got? And he was like, okay. And like came by, and then 6 months later, built the controls, helped me kind of reverse engineer a lot of parts. Nice. Just like really, really helped me out a lot.
Yeah, he got the bug a little bit too.
Yep. Uh-huh. So yeah, like it's I think a lot of that, and just learning from him. I had like an amazing pipe fitter plumber that I worked with. It's like just crazy experienced, and just really lucky to learn from him, and just stayed with them and had a really small crew. My brother, some of the who I played in the band with, and Chad, they're mechanics. They're So we all kind of just put our heads together and like didn't stop until we figured it out.
Right, because there's no textbook to this. You guys figured this out. This is custom. I mean, so a lot of it's like rebuilt older machinery, especially that one machine, but you had to make it work again. And there's so many new shiny parts making that thing work. Like, this is incredible. There, like you said, engineering, tech skills.
Right.
There's so much going into this. There's got to be thousands and thousands of man hours into getting this operation up and running.
Yeah, probably. Definitely.
Congrats.
Well, thank you.
I'm very blown away. I hope you guys can hear how cool this is, and you check out the website and you just look into these things. I wish I could show you a picture right now.
Well, thank you. What I'm seeing in the music industry right now, like with COVID and with kind of the transformation we're just like experiencing as a species to some degree, I think has been really eye-opening to me in kind of a rediscovery of seeing how like how much authenticity and how much honesty and conviction and like all the important basic things that we all like strive to do, how much of those things matter now, I feel like. And I'm just seeing that in music. From this perspective, I'm seeing like it was all about getting the big distributors, and it was all about, this and that, and like, kind of like the 90s music mentality, like. But I feel like now it's like kind of going back to direct to consumer, like where labels are like, sending things right direct. And like, I wonder if we're getting back to a place that might be really kind of positive.
Yeah, I hope so. And it's funny how many times I've mentioned this because I've had many bands on the show, but I talk about the music industry and I talk about the big bands and the big albums and the records that are they're manufactured for the masses and they're distributed to the masses in a very like top 40. Ugh. Mm-hmm. I am not a fan. I have never been a huge fan of the top 40 stuff. This is so, like you said, it's like getting in touch with the band. It's like directly connecting with them and getting in touch with the community and the little companies, little record shops that are making these things. So there's not, how many did you say are across the country?
There's like 25 in the US and I think 60 worldwide.
That's insane. Mm-hmm. That's so few. We have 50 states and there's 25 record shops. Yeah. And one of them's in Vermont.
Right.
When have we ever gotten to say that there's not a lot of these? And
I'm so psyched.
We have one.
It's a big deal to me.
It really is. It is to me too. This is fantastic. We're going to get back in touch with the people. Yeah. And we're going to get the bands back in touch with the people. And we're going to cut out that middleman.
Right.
Who needs the middleman?
The middleman hasn't shown to be effective. Or has the big man, at the top floor of the record companies. Like everybody knew it, but everyone is like, okay, well, this is what everyone's doing, so let's do it. And like, I have no idea. I hope my hope is that we return to some sort of authenticity with the way that we want to express ourselves in music.
I think we really are. It's funny talking to people because I've gotten much more positive since I started talking to other people in the area, especially about music. Because I was always kind of down and everything's awful and the local bands are good, but it's never going to get any better. But I'm starting to really open my eyes and think, like, and I've mentioned Shaky Graves before, but I'm going to say his name real quick. Once Shaky Graves is one of these guys who doesn't have the big band label. Gotcha. He's not mainstream enough. He doesn't fit any radio category, so they kind of ignore him in the mainstream. He sells out shows everywhere, though. He's a YouTube star, but the mainstream still doesn't fit him. People like Mark Riboulet, I don't know if you've heard of this. No. He's absolutely insane. I love Mark Riboulet. He's one of these people who just kind of like makes a song up on the spot, and he'll do this for like 2 hours. Just keeps going, making stuff up. And directly contacting his fan base.
I just heard about him recently.
He's fantastically hilarious. I will say he's a bit rough. He can be a little raunchy around the edges, but he's doing it just to make you laugh. Like, that's literally what it's about. And he gets really into it, and he dances, and he's just fantastic, but he's so directly talking to his fans. Because like, one girl will be like, "Hi, I'm Shelby, and I love you," and he'll sing a song about Shelby. "Hey, Shelby, what's up, Shelby?" That's amazing. And that's what he does. And he has exploded. People love these guys that are just so open to the fans and happy to connect with them and happy to make that real. Instead of like me dictating to you, like I'm talking on a screen, you know, like no one can see me and I'm disconnected from reality, basically. They're really connecting with their audience. They're really connecting with people. What do people love? What do people want? And the bands are doing it too. They're starting to kind of open up to it. The whole streaming during COVID, which was kind of crazy in some ways. But they were really getting in touch with their band, like with their audience and who wanted to hear from them. Right. Which is awesome. So yeah, I think slowly we're kind of wrapping back around to that mentality, that the band that you can see and the guy you can talk to about the music. Yeah. Is better than some guy in a suit who's not even going to make eye contact with you, who's just going to walk away and you're not going to know he produced that album. Right, totally. Oh man, so there's been hundreds of albums made, all different genres. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, everything from hip hop to heavy metal to reggae to hardcore to country, spoken word. I was just going to ask if you got any spoken word. I feel like that's a vinyl thing. Like when I think of spoken word on a recording, I just for some reason think it's got to be on vinyl. Yeah. I'm psyched. There's some prospects of other jobs coming in, of some bigger stuff. I hope we get to do more of it, you know? I'm sure you will, with the way everything's trending. And I feel like right now with people, this is how you connect with your audience. If you're in a band, you can't really play out right now. And if you can, it's very limited. Which I bless these bands who are coming up with ways they can do it. The outdoor shows are awesome, but it's getting colder. So I saw one band did a bubble show. Oh, neat. Did you? No, I didn't see it. They had every single person in the audience was in a 6-foot bubble, as was the entire band. And they all just ran into each other during the entire show. Oh, neat. It looked fantastic, but it kind of gave me anxiety because I just imagined the bubble running out of air. Right. It was fantastic, though. Oh, I'm sorry. Random aside. So, what is the process like when a band actually reaches out to you? Do you have there's no middleman for you. The band reaches out to you directly. What's that like? Band or label. They say we have this many pieces we're looking to make. We want to do 250 this color, 250 that color. Masters are heading in, and I just kind of build a project from there and send it out, and we send test pressings. We get all the materials in. I make test pressings and send them to the customer to review, to sign off on before we do the full run. It's right now we are at 12 weeks lead time. Wow. That's a lot of business. Yeah. And the process just takes about 8 weeks. Any way you slice it, it takes 8 weeks for the whole process to be seen through. But we just, we're busy. We're definitely busy right now, but you know, we can only do so much here. And, I just want to be cautious because, you know, our world is changing and who knows what's going to happen. And it's great that, you know, vinyl's going crazy, but I just want to make sure that we can keep making records. So right. Keep it up. Well, everyone, if you need a vinyl record pressed, you can get one pressed in Vermont. Yes. I know several bands who've had vinyl pressed in Vermont in the last year just from talking to them through the show. So the business is looking. It's funny though, because I think they struggle with finding the places to do it. It sounds like it's kind of weird, and they find places based on word of mouth a lot. Like, oh, I knew this, I've worked with this guy in this band and he worked with this shop and that's what we're going to do. But a lot of time I think they'll find like a little label or something, and I don't even know if they know who the record shop is that's actually cutting it. Yeah. And it's expensive
too. It's sometimes prohibitively expensive. If you can sell 200 or 300 copies, you can make a little bit.
Right.
If you're doing less than that, it's really hard to make money off of it. It's really hard to make money off of manufacturing it. Even when they came out with the wax cylinder in the 1800s, they had trouble making profit off of it. And ever since the dawn of vinyl records, like the profit margin in the manufacturing sector has always been so difficult unless you're at this massive scale, so
Right.
it's this weird thing. It's extremely hard to make. It's extremely expensive to make. And, in turn is expensive for people to get made. So that I in some weird way, I think that's what makes it so special, because if it was easy and cheap and, it would be like a CD.
Like the digital,
Yeah.
like not even having a physical copy of just listening online where it's just
Right.
in the airwaves, which there's nothing wrong with being in the airwaves. But
And it's not about the money either. It's important for me to say, this is a podcast, and you can't, if you were in the plant here, you would realize that it's not, a money thing. But I, of course, have never got into it for the money. I got into it to make a job for myself. So that's really it. And I guess it could be way worse.
No, it's fantastic what you're doing here. I think people are really starting to really appreciate these things. I mentioned to you, I just got a record player in the last year because it's like, I really want to listen to some vinyl. Like, I really want to get back into it. My parents had one, but I want my own so I can find these punk albums, actually. Because punk albums, there's something special about them through
I agree.
vinyl. I think through any means, through vinyl is a little more special. It's very deliberate. You are focusing on that album. You are giving it time and attention. It just makes it better. So I had to get the new Days and Days album on vinyl. So I had to get a record player.
Awesome.
And it's made me so happy because I'm just realizing how much is out there. And there's a lot of these funky live albums that they only printed on vinyl for some of my bands that I love. And it just makes me really, really happy. And I feel like every time I get into something, the rest of the world does too, which I know is a total...
Hey, you're in the flow.
Everyone says things like that, but it's actually, it's weirdly true for me. I went through this phase where I was like, I'm going to wear these little choker things from the 90s. And then 6 months later, they were everywhere. They were in Claire's, they were in Hot Topic, and suddenly they were everywhere again, and I stopped wearing them. But I feel like when I get into vinyl, and 6 months later, they outsell CDs, I'm like, I bet everyone did exactly what I did.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
And I think everyone's going to keep doing it too, because people come over to my house and they see me, and I'll throw on a record, and I'm like, that's kind of cool. And then they tell me they went and bought one a while later. I'm like, see, you said it was weird.
Funny.
Like, that's lame. And somebody was like, well, it doesn't sound as good. Like, that's the whole point.
Right.
Like, it's supposed to have some analog character to it. Like, you're supposed to feel the music.
Yep, totally.
Which, I mean, I guess a lot of people don't. There's something about a nerd who loves music in the way that I do, where I'm like, I want to feel the music. I feel like maybe a lot of the top 40 people don't want to feel the music the way I do.
Right.
I want to know what they mean by what they're saying in the words, and I want to get who the band is. I want to feel the music, and I really want to get that sound and hold it in my hand. And
Right.
I don't know, maybe other people don't feel that way, but I have a hunch. I have a hunch based on the numbers that they do, and it's coming back, and we're going to start cutting out the guy in the suit. Let's get rid of the 40 producers. Let's get rid of all the effects and digital auto-tune. Auto-tune has a place, but not on a vinyl record, I think, sometimes.
And how are the quality of, like, the new records that you're getting? They seem fine?
They seem awesome. I think the biggest thing, and I should mention this because more people are getting into vinyl and they don't realize the needle on a record player makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Because I bought records, and I bought this when I first bought my record player. I'm like, it's like everything's wrong. Like, there's something wrong with this record player. It's brand new needle. It skips on brand new records. And I bought like 3 brand new records, pulled them out of the plastic. It's skipping. Spent like 2 weeks being huffy, like something's wrong. And I checked that it was all balanced.
Yeah.
And then all I did is buy a diamond tip needle all those albums play perfectly. Not one of my albums skips. I have no idea what was wrong with that other needle. It was brand new, but
Gotcha.
it was not a good needle. Like, I would highly recommend buy a good needle.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
The record player itself's pretty simple. It's
Boom.
just got to spin at the right speed. That needle needs to be able to pick up all those little bumps just perfectly.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, that's a very important thing. A lot of, fortunately, we don't deal with it too much, but there'll be times where we'll send a test pressing out and, we'll have to help just like quickly troubleshoot the table with
Right.
them, and then it comes alive, So I think that's a really great point.
It's amazing how much of a difference that makes. Like, that's 90, well, I wouldn't say 90% of the sound of the record player. I think the record, assuming that the record shop knows what they're doing and it wasn't something eaten by the dog,
Right.
it probably can play okay. Honestly, some of the records I bought were used, and I got it, and I was kind of like, oh no,
Right.
like, oh no, this
Yeah.
isn't gonna play. Diamond tip needle, smooth as butter.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, and they're scuffed. Like, you can physically, like, you can
Right.
see the scuff marks on these things. That needle plays it just fine, though. The other needle, when I tried playing it with the first needle, it literally ended the entire side of one of these albums in like 2 minutes because
Yeah.
it skipped so
Right.
much that it was just done in 2 minutes. And that other needle, suddenly I can listen to every single word. It doesn't skip
Right, neat.
1 second. So, yeah, troubleshoot that record player. Don't blame the record.
Yeah, and if you have one way to check for a manufacturing defect is to put a dime on the head of the needle. If you have a needle like Becca just described that's skating on a record, you can it will destroy to a degree a pressing, but you can determine if the grooves are indeed intact and it's skating like that. You can put a nickel or a dime on top of the stylus, and it should track the entire way through.
Right, it'll just weigh it down ever so slightly.
Yeah. It is not good for the needle or the record. But another thing is that I've seen crossed grooves on projects before, where in the cutting process, the stylus will kind of swerve over into the other one, and you'll get a skip or a weird thing that happens there, and like that's stuff that we look out for. But geez, yeah, the
Right.
defects in records.
Yeah, oh yeah, you gotta take good care of them. It's funny how they're so big, though. I feel like with a CD, I was really bad with my CDs, especially in high school, because it's small, and I just kind of like
totally.
I throw it in that CD case, throw it, and it's fine, and it wouldn't be fine, but it was so small, and it was in my car, and I'm doing it one-handed. You can't do that with a record, though.
No.
And if you did, I would be very upset with you.
Right.
Like, you respect the vinyl. I feel like out of cassettes are cool, but I don't respect a cassette. I'll do the same
Right.
thing. I'll fling it in the back seat.
Yep.
Throw that cassette.
Right.
You don't throw a record. You respect that record.
That's true. Even the oils from your fingers when you pick them out. Well, they're like a vortex of static electricity kind of by nature of the process. So it's like, yeah, it's amazing.
I've noticed that. How do you keep... So if you are like me and you're just listening to records at home, is there some way to de-static a record so that it's not picking up dirt and hair and whatever else is floating around in my apartment?
Yep, there's a couple techniques. One, you can try putting a dryer sheet underneath your slip mat.
Oh, cool.
Is one. You can try making sure everything is grounded correctly. And then there's like, a fancy thing called a zero stat, like little gun we have over
Yeah,
here.
or like a static
You see the little
remover
blue gun that's on the wooden box right there.
Yep.
You can, every test pressing that I make that I pull off the machine, I hit both sides with
Okay,
it.
so it's more about like just trying to keep the static away
That's
from
it.
the record.
Exactly.
Like, you got to think about you when you
Yep.
pick the record up because you're transferring it. And I should know this, but I was just wondering, is there some magical way that I can just keep the static off?
Right.
It doesn't
Yeah,
sound like it,
static
though.
is so crazy. No, like I have a grounding rod out back of the plant here, and I have, we have all of the equipment grounded
I'm
to
sure.
a grounding rod just to try to eliminate static electricity wherever possible. That's like all of these barrels are paper or metal. Because
Yep.
if they're plastic, they'll just you pour out a thing in plastic and your hair is standing straight up.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah. It's crazy how much damage electrical static can do. At this point, most good electronics, I have an electrical degree, most
Oh,
good
well, no way.
electronics will actually protect against ESD. So now it's kind of like not an electrical issue for the most part. I do know bad equipment that will blow up if you shock it statically. But things like records, you gotta be so careful, because if it gets a little, like a hair, a nut will bring back the infamous pink hair.
Yeah.
If the pink hair gets stuck to the actual press itself, and you did it 3 times, I don't know how quickly you guys do
It'll
it.
just go in the record, and we'll just throw the record. That
Right,
one
you're like
record
every
out.
one of them's gonna get chucked. Like you
Yeah.
gotta make sure no hair
Yeah.
can be anywhere near anything. It's one thing if it gets stuck in the record, but can you damage the actual press itself?
Yep. Yeah, like if you're doing a setup with a stamper and you just lightly brush it with any piece of metal, it's gone.
Oh,
So like, it's kind of, we all have this like really funny technique on how we handle the parts and when we do setups, and when I watch other people do it, it's funny to me. But I mean, it's like painting a car or painting something that's you have to be hypersensitive about any debris, like you have to clean it with acetone, and then you have to use tack cloth, and you have to be quick, and you have to be mindful of where,
right, yeah. Because if you accidentally damaged, what did you call it again? Sorry,
The stamper?
The stamper.
Yeah.
If you actually damaged that and you didn't really notice immediately, do you listen to the album quick enough to catch it, or are you gonna make a whole stack of them and then
Fortunately,
realize?
yeah. Nope. It's a great question. We listen to every record. So I listen to every record on headphones when I first make it. And then we put it on the machine for the production run. We listen to it again. And then we listen to one from like the last 25 of the production run. And you can, any like significant defect you can see with the naked eye.
Right.
There's
Which I'm sure takes a bit of skill. You've got
yeah,
to build that up
like
over
that,
time.
that light is kind of,
Especially with all the colors, does that make it hard?
it doesn't. No, it's just like it's almost like looking at a mirror finish, so it's pretty easy to see, but
Okay.
there is microscopic molding issues that will arise that you need a microscope to check out. But that's, usually anything that is going to be extremely audible and interruptive, you can see. Yep.
That's awesome. Lots of QC going into it.
That's it.
Wow.
Well put. It's all about QC.
Well, that's it. You don't
Yeah.
want to put out a record that skips for people.
No.
And I feel I want to stress the troubleshooting with the record players, because I was so upset when I got that first album. Peel the plastic off that record and it started skipping.
Yeah, that's super disappointing.
And I feel like for a lot of people, like my generation, we didn't have we didn't have a record player. My parents had a stack of records, and we had a broken record player with no needle on it, and that was the first 20 years of my life. And then we bought my dad one, but I knew nothing about it. Like they ran it, and I knew nothing about it. So a lot of people buying a record player, if you're not an older person, you probably have never used one before, or you've only seen them used a couple times. So definitely look into it. Definitely do some troubleshooting. Don't hate on vinyl just because your record skipped one time.
Absolutely, and that's the truth. And there's a lot of good resources in Burlington. Speaking volumes, our friend Winfield is a repair technician for turntables, and they just started carrying new turntables that are like perfect, like introductory models. They'll help you.
Awesome.
That's important.
Yeah, cool. Where's that located?
They're right down the street on Pine Street.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we're on Pine Street now,
yep.
by the way.
They are located at Pine Street and Marble Street, right on the corner.
Cool. So they're right down the road.
And they're fantastic.
That is so awesome. There is a place that used to sell records in Burlington. Do we have
There's two other amazing places,
what I
and
was
I don't
gonna
want to leave them
say.
out. Pure Pop Records, they're the oldest.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
I remember that one.
Burlington Records, they opened a handful of years ago. They're doing amazing. They're also like all
Cool.
3 record shops are top notch.
One of them's upstairs, right? Somewhere near Church Street, or that one might have closed. I'm trying to remember. I was so young when I went there, though.
There,
I feel
no,
like it
Pure
was...
Pop is downstairs in the basement, off of like South Winooski.
Okay, I feel like there used to be one.
Oh, I
They
know what you're
sold
talking
other
about.
stuff too,
I know
but
what
they
you're
sold,
talking
they had
about.
like
Yep.
the top floor
Right.
had records in it, and I always thought it was so cool. But I didn't even have a record player.
Flex Records?
That
No?
might have been it. I was so young. I don't remember. This was
Yep.
probably 15 years ago
Gotcha.
now. I'm dating myself. I'm so
Yep.
old. Oh, man. It's so funny to me that you don't have a middleman type person. Like, you do what you do, and you don't have some, the guy in the suit out,
Right.
like, come
Right.
get a record pressed here.
Yeah, nope.
the
I do.
marketing.
Yeah, my wife does is the CFO. She does a lot of like the invoicing in the books. And
How many hours a week are you putting in to do this?
I'm at 60.
I
And
figured.
that's like, yeah, I do probably like 50, 55 on site. And then the rest is kind of just nights and weekends, or I like
Right.
do super early mornings. And yeah, so a lot, but I'm not complaining. Andrew Rokamp and Alex Rain, they work with me in the shop. They're amazing people. I'm psyched to work with them. Just shout out to them.
Yeah, they do a great job. Congrats to all of you.
Yeah.
This is so fantastic.
Thank you, Becca.
I want to say congrats to Burlington because this is here and it's so cool. And everyone, I wish you could all come check it out. I'll take pictures. You'll see them online.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Back
This
to you,
has been
Becca.
great.
See you around.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Justin, for being on the show. It was a great experience talking to him. It was so much fun walking into that record plant and seeing all the vinyl on the wall. It was beautiful. I was astonished at how much went into it. Thank you so much. Please go to the show notes page at vermonttalks.com/20. Yeah, we're on the 20th episode already. Crazy. I will have links to the Burlington Record Plant website. I will have links to everything we talked about. Yeah, check it out. Thank you so much for listening. You made it to the end. That was what was new in the 802. Have a great day. The Vermont Talks show music was created by Jason Baker. Thank you so much, Jason, for making the music. You can check out his website at jbakervt.com.